Welcome to Rapture Recovery, Big Book Step Study, Program of Action. This week we're going to focus on our Step 6. This reading is located in the section Into Action. It is located at the top of page 76. Go ahead and grab a highlighter, grab a pen, and feel free to circle and highlight this paragraph and write out in the side margins your thoughts and just anything that's coming to your mind. We really want you to have some material written in your big book. So when you go into the fellowship, you have some content to share your experience, strength, and hope with this step in your meeting. So far, we have had a mighty journey. We have had a mighty journey. You have done a lot of work. If you're vigorously honest with yourself, you've done more work in this step study than you've probably done in any other, concentrated section of your life and only focusing on you and your side of the street. We started out in the preface of the big book where they give us the information and they help us understand where our program came from, why we have the program, and they're celebrating the consistency of the program. Then we moved to the first edition and we talked about anonymity. Because of all the work that you've done so far in this program, I hope you're having an understanding of why you're along the side of other people that are doing this work, why this needs to be a safe, secret, spiritual place, and why your anonymity is so important. And I pray that you're feeling the confidence of all the work that you're doing to share with other people. The next thing we did was we talked about our past spiritual experiences, how our program is not affiliated with any other organization or denomination. And so we did a gratitude list on our past spiritual experiences so we can bring those gratitudes into our current spiritual experience. Then we hit the second edition. We talked about all kinds of fun things in my mind. We talked about the Oxford groups. We gave validity to Dr. Silkworth. They also gave validity of the power of one alcoholic working with another one. They told us that the book was not written by 2 people. It was written by 100 people. That information is actually in a preface or in a forward to our book. So nobody's trying to trick us here. And then they went through the traditions. And in the third edition, they talk about women and they're celebrating the rise of women. And we have encouraged you to find groups within our fellowship that have women in them so you can have Me Too moments. In the forward to the 4th edition, they talk about technology, and that's where we are right now. Is all that a prophecy? Sounds like it to me. Then we went to the doctor's opinion and we validated our disease, where it can go. We did our first drink inventory on this page of the workbook. Then we went to Bill's story and we're validating the program even further by giving you information on one of the founding members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're giving you their experience, strength, and hope through the fellowship and through the program with success. Then we also spent some time here gearing up for our second step. So that wrapped up our first step. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. So what we did was an unmanageability chart. So we sat in all the different areas of our current lives and we focused on what was unmanageable. This helps us look at facts over feelings. Then we made a pit stop and there's a solution. They gave us some guidelines. We have a great activity sheet here of some base work activities and questions we could ask ourselves to understand what our strenuous program of recovery is going to need to look like. Then we went on to more about alcoholism because, we haven't talked about it enough, right? And we talked about how we need to have a program and a support system to help us with our disease of alcoholism. We talked about the obsession of the mind. We talked about what were the 5 worst things we did when we were alcoholically drinking. And that wrapped up that step. Then we started into our second step, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Here we talked about how God doesn't make hard terms, old ideas have no proof of deliverance, and God will restore us to sanity. We did a gratitude list on God and who we wanted God to be in our current life. We referred to the list of the bedevilments, which is an example of what our life looks like without God. In the paragraph in the big book, right under the bedevilments, they give us the solution to all those problems, which is a spiritual experience. And we're in the program of action in that spiritual experience because we remember that faith without works is dead. Then we moved on to our third step. And on this page of the workbook, you did your third step prayer. You journaled it. You really accessed the right-hand side of your brain. We're understanding that we need to offer ourselves. We need to give up all the difficulties that we're having. Our main purpose here is to bear witness to those. I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. And we're realizing that in order to access a spiritual realm, we need to pray. And then we moved on to the second segment of the workbook, which was steps 4 through 9. That's where we are right now. Last week, we spent a great amount of time in step 5, but first we had to do the work in step 4. We understood that liquor is only a symptom. We had moments of triumph that were short-lived. Our why is our resentments. We spent a week, you should have spent about a week, spending some daily time focusing on this inventory. We also spent some time reviewing the inventory, which is amazing. We asked ourselves what this inventory would have looked like if we would have relied upon God. We started looking for maybe some patterns that we were seeing. We started addressing fears. And then we also started creating an ideal of what we want our future relationships to look like. And then last week, you should have spent some fun time in step 5 and really focusing on what that looks like for you, wherever you are in your sobriety journey. If this was your first step 5, I had a lot of prayers that you would actually have a spiritual experience and look at the facts, look at what God has provided for you all the way up to this point. He has provided you a connecting point with the fellowship. He has provided you with the knowledge that you need to recover from your disease. He has provided you with direction. He has protected your time through the week to actually do this big book step study. And he provided the perfect person or people to do this 5th step with. If it was your first one, I highly recommend that you just did it with one person. If you're doing it with a partner and you guys have some long-term sobriety, but you're looking for a program of accountability to help sponsor other girls in sobriety, I hope that you had a fun coffee kind of sharing some clips on your 5th steps. I just thought that was like the funnest thought that I had last week was, wow, people with long-term sobriety could be getting together for coffee and actually looking at a modified 5th step they did, and they could actually do it together. So one could listen to the other and the other could listen to them. I mean, wow, that is a gift. Again, we're not so much after the structure of sponsor and sponsee. We're after the structure of supporting spiritual sobriety soldiers. That's what we're after, supporting, okay? So if you really dig deep into what sponsoring is, it's supporting. So we don't want to focus on the family tree. We want to focus on what action is behind the family tree, what support is actually happening here. How are we relying upon God to provide this support? How are we getting our eyes off of personalities and putting them onto principles? So we're going into step 6 this week. And what we're going to do here is, again, we're going to try to take this left brain information, and we are trying to create a conduit of connection with our right brain. This is one of the shortest. Again, I'm not a professional, but this is a short step. I can remember thinking to myself, well, that was easy. That was only one paragraph. It is the hardest step to take. So I don't know what the theology is behind this, but, we do keep it simple. But having a spiritual step at this point in our journey, after just doing a fourth and a fifth step, seems real important to me, okay? So what we're going to do here is go over to page 76. Now, as I'm sitting here doing this exact recording right now, I needed something to mark my page 76, because when I do my review of this, I have to go to the page with the steps on it so I can review them with you guys. Now, when I had to grab, my big book has tons of pieces of paper in it because of all the work that I've done. I've never really gone through it. I've actually cleaned out my papers a couple of times and put them in one special place, so it would be fun for me to review all of the papers. But at this point, I just needed to grab one piece of paper out of my big book to mark page 76. So as I'm making this recording, I can turn to it. You're never going to believe. Now, remember, God is in the details. You're never going to believe what page I pulled. It is a character defects team phone list. So in 2019, I did and participated in a character defects workshop. So I participated in, I think this was a month long. It could have even been 6 weeks. Character defect workshop. And God wanted me to remember this, right? We had cut out probably, 100 different character defects, right? Now, there are a couple of main character defects that they're highlighting in the big book that I'll tell you about, but they can show themselves up in 100 forms of fear, right? So that's what this piece of paper was. And we had cut them up. And every single day, we grabbed one character defect and we looked for that character defect in our life. And we also prayed away that character defect. And then we had little boxes. And another fellowship member did all this work. You would put the little character defect, which is really big, right? If we did an analogy on this, in the box at the end of the day, and you released it to God. So that was kind of a step 7. So that activity in itself is a pretty good one to reach over into the right brain. But it was so funny to me that just by perchance was a piece of paper I grabbed. God obviously wanted me to share that with you guys. Okay, on page 76, if we can answer to our satisfaction, when we then look at step 6, we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can He now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. That's on page 76 of the big book. So what I've created here as an activity is a chart. Now, obviously, this is a 4-week chart because I wanted to give you a platform from the character defect workshop that I just discussed, okay? So this isn't going to be a sheet that gets finished in the 1 week that you are going to spend doing this activity. But what we want to do is every single day, when agitated, we want to see what character defect you are using and write that in its space. Now, there are a couple throughout the big book. They focus on 4 main ones here. They've talked about them in the 4th step. They were actually in the columns that we looked at. It was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and fear. So you can write those things out on a side piece of paper. In our 11th step, we talk about in On Awakening, we want God, this is on page 86, in the middle of the big book. We want God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So we have to spend a couple of minutes here and ask us, what does self-pity look like, right? What does that look like? On a very, very large scale for me, that looks like me sitting in Pity City and being a victim. So if any point during my day I start feeling I'm not getting what I deserve, or I am a victim with a person, place, or a thing, I understand that that character defect is self-pity. Dishonest. What does that look like? Where am I putting God-sized expectations on people, places, and things? I'm expecting something, right? So I'm being dishonest. I have to be honest with myself that every human is fallible, okay? Every place isn't going to meet every one of my specific needs. So where am I being dishonest with myself? Right? And then self-seeking, what am I looking to take, right? You know, if I have an end goal of receiving something from a person, place, or a thing, what is that, right? If I'm agitated, I'm not getting what I thought I was going to get. So those are my big ones. What fear? Fear is a character defect. So what fear am I sitting in? Because in step 6, we're ready to let God remove from us. Okay, but we have to understand and dig deep. What is He going to remove? We have to identify those things. So this week, if you can use this chart, and on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, spend a couple of minutes at the end of the day to really pray to God and ask Him to show you your character defects. Now, I normally don't do this, so this is a real one-off. But again, since we're in step 6 and it's only one paragraph in the big book, I'm going to pull from another resource for an Experience, Strength, and Hope story. That's it. This story comes from Paths to Recovery, Al-Anon Steps, Traditions, and Concepts, and it's published by the Al-Anon Family Groups. This story is located on page 67, and it was a huge ta-da moment I got when I was actually working with another sponsee. It's under the Member Share Experience, Strength, and Hope, my perspective on step 6. I find myself at step 6. I've been here before, and I'm sure I'll be here again. This time now that I've been working the steps for 8 years, step 6 is about perspective, pain, prayer, patience, process, and payoff. Perspective. My second sponsor described defects of character as survival skills that no longer serve me. This definition helps me stop being so hard on myself. It helps me understand that for most of my life, these defects of character worked for my benefit. Since my higher power wants more than mere survival for me now, I can choose to let them go. Pain. When clinging to my defect or survival skill becomes more painful than my fear of letting it go, I become entirely ready to have God remove that defect of character. Prayer. Step 6 says God removes all these defects of character, not me. My part is to pray for openness and willingness. God chooses which defects He will remove. I just do the footwork. Patience. Since God is in charge, God gets to choose when and how fast He will remove my defects of character. A couple years ago, when I humbly asked Him to remove my arrogance, God proceeded to first show me how terribly arrogant I was and how it affected so many of my relationships in a negative way. I was able to accept that perhaps I humbly asked a little too soon. Process. Becoming entirely ready involves a process for me, a grief process, where I walk through my denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. As I complete the grief process, I become ready to have God remove a defect or former survival skill. It is helpful for me to pretend the defect is a friend by writing a thank you and goodbye letter. Payoff. When I struggle with a defect, my current sponsor asks, what's the payoff? In other words, since I'm having a hard time letting it go, what's still good about it? Lately, I've been struggling with forgiveness. If I remain unforgiving, the payoff is that I can savor thoughts of revenge. I can feel sorry for myself for the hurt that was inflicted on me. I can justify my actions and remain distant. I don't have to work toward a closer relationship with that person if I remain unforgiving. Thank you.